Oh, I love it when the hush just naturally comes. Thanks, everybody. Happy New Year. Happy New Year. Welcome. Yeah, just always feels so sweet to come here on a Wednesday and see a collection of familiar and new faces. And yeah, gather here together to be with the Dharma. And what an amazing way to start the year. We've been making our way through this just beautiful, timeless text, the Guide to the Bodhisattva Way of Life, with commentary by Pema Chödrön. And I thought it would be nice, since we're beginning the new year, to kind of just begin again with the basic premise of this book and why we are reading it and what its intention is for. So for folks who either have never encountered this text or don't remember, no problem. This is an original text from the 8th century, and this former prince who, on the evening of his enthronement, escaped and decided, I'm going to have a monastic life, Shanti Deva. And he went to the famous monastery and place of higher education for Buddhist monastics called Nalanda. And he was known widely at Nalanda as a total louseabout, no good. Didn't do the dishes, didn't practice very hard, and, varying accounts about his, not super nefarious misdeeds, but he certainly wasn't a star student. And the congregation of other monks said, I think I know a way that we can help him, kind of put him into shape. Let's ask him to give the big talk, like the main Dharma talk. Then he'll see that he really should have been paying attention and studying. And he shows up, this kind of louseabout who has been doing nothing, and gives this unbelievable transmission of how to live life with an open heart, even as the world is on fire. And then, again, according to these 8th century accounts, is never seen again. Like kind of disappears, into the infinite. And this text, you hear so many wonderful Buddhist teachers talk about it. It's such a beloved text by so many. And it's such I think, a meaningful text to come back to time and time again. Certainly the 8th century prose, let's be honest, sometimes feel a little dated. But Pema Chödrön, bringing it into this more contemporary, psychological, relational context really helps translate. And the very idea of this book, or the term, Bodhisattva, such a beautiful term. It is essentially, this idea that any of us and all of us, no matter what we've done or not done, can fully commit our hearts to awakening and become warriors of compassion. And this, way of the Bodhisattva, meaning the kind of instructions for how we do this practically day to day, also includes a commitment and a vow, a bodhisattva vow, something that for many of us who are resonating with these teachings or maybe have over time, it's this daily commitment over and over and over to orient our mind towards awakening for the sake of all beings. So the two parts of that, we actually have to become more available, our hearts become more transparent, our minds become more clear in order for us to then be there for all beings. We don't just get to do I'm just gonna help all beings. Anyone tried that one? Just like, I'm gonna help everybody, but I'm not gonna help myself. You can do it somewhat, but you get burnt out and resentful and overwhelmed. So this idea of, this essential importance of really finding the stillness, the attention, the focus, the clarity of mind, so that we can see things clearly, become less reactive, and also that deep tenderizing of the heart, so we can let in and really be available for the challenges and difficulties of our world. And there's a couple very sweet lines here about this quality of becoming a bodhisattva, which is cultivating bodhicitta, or the awakened mind. So one thing Pema Chödrön describes here, she says, on the absolute level, bodhicitta is a non-dual wisdom the vast, unbiased essence of mind. And something we've talked about here is it's not just our activity, not just that as a warrior of compassion, we intend to help others. That's great. That's what's called a relative bodhicitta, engaging in the world with the open heart. But this absolute level, a part of what needs to be cultivated is a mind that is so vast and so clear and open, but also just like infused with love, like infused with love. And for many of us on the path, we practice awareness, spacious awareness, open awareness, but sometimes we forget that that is love. That's not emptiness, that's not void. That is this sense of all-pervasive, vast love. And when that absolute level of bodhicitta is something we cultivate and work on and experience, then we get to see everything through that love without reactivity and without kind of getting overwhelmed. Another thing she says about the power of bodhicitta, she says, why does bodhicitta have so much power? She says, perhaps the simplest answer is that it lifts us out of self-centeredness and gives us a chance to leave dysfunctional habits behind. Moreover, everything we encounter becomes an opportunity to develop the outrageous courage of the Bodhi heart. When we get hit hard, we look outward and see how other people also have difficult times. When we feel lonely or angry or depressed, we let these dark moods link us with the sorrows of others. No matter how dark and gloomy or joyful and uplifted our lives are, we can cultivate that sense of shared humanity. So that's this kind of power of bodhicitta. And yeah, I think this this invitation, it's quite interesting how it comes up in the text a lot, is you're practicing right in the fire. And I think tonight about, the land and the people and the animals down in Southern California, practicing in the fire, in this world which in so many literal and other ways feels like it's on fire. And these practices are right here for us so that we can stand in it, stand with it. So I feel like it's really beautiful to have the opportunity to practice this together here. Tonight we're going to be focusing we're currently on this 6th chapter here with these 3 disciplines. And these 3 disciplines of, how do we ever more engage non-harming and how we move through the world? How do we gather virtue and how do we benefit others? So that's what we will be getting into this evening, but I wanted to kind of just refresh us on that bigger view and that bigger vow of becoming a bodhisattva. I find it, beautiful as an idea and also quite inspiring, since otherwise there can be feelings of helplessness and overwhelm. And the idea that this training manual to sit here in the fire has been around for all these centuries and continue to be used is encouraging. So glad that we're all here together to do this. And we'll start with a meditation. I will kind of invite us in through the heart a bit, so kind of contacting or connecting with bodhicitta. And if this is, the first time you've ever heard that word, bodhicitta, maybe it will feel abstract, so I'll give some other terms or words you could use as well, just a way to find that core sense of care within our heart for others, and of course we're included in that. So taking a moment and really feeling ourselves situated in this room together. And for friends at home, feeling a sense of being situated with the other beings in your home. Allowing ourselves to more fully arrive by getting a sense of quite literally where we are, just after 7 o'clock, on a very beautiful, clear and dark night. In the first month of this new year, of this quarter century. And feeling ourselves situated where we are geographically, right here on this specific block for those of us in the center, across from a supermarket and next to a restaurant and right in it, right amid all these other beings. And feeling this most intimate of locations within our own bodies. Just as if we were, for the very first time, traveling in a new town and exploring a neighborhood, could we bring that same freshness and curiosity to noticing how our body is right here in this moment? This unbelievable miracle of a human body. And receiving each breath for the gift that it is. And finding this beautiful internal posture to bring heaven down to earth. So finding that sense of uprightness, vividness through the spine. Sense of opening and brightness through the crown. And feeling and inviting a softness through the face and the chest and the belly. And for a couple breaths, giving ourselves this opportunity to find uprightness and brightness through the inhale, almost as though the breath was traveling its way up the spine. And then balancing with a softness through the exhale, relaxation, ease. When the mind wanders, not if, of course it will, it is of the wandering nature. Seeing how quickly we can notice, and then relax and release, and then return with a sense of rejoicing back to the body and the breath. I'll ring the bell to begin more fully entering into this practice, allowing ourselves to really hear and receive the bell, noticing the full length of its tone, timbre. And we begin the practice with this orientation towards bodhicitta. Feel or imagine the presence of this heart of awakening. This heart that yearns for all beings to be free. This heart which quivers in the face of great suffering in the world, which is tenderized with its caring, with its desire. While we can feel that strength and uprightness of the spine, we can find the soft, gentle, caring presence, this heart of awakening. And to potentiate this heart, we can dedicate some of our care and our compassion this evening towards the beings living in Southern California, experiencing loss and change and pain. And to the land which is losing so much of its vegetation. And simply with our breath, we allow ourselves to be touched and moved, to have that quivering of the heart with the inhale. And with the exhale, simply extending care and compassion, feeling or imagining that this could radiate from us like light. In this simple way, using the breath to ventilate the heart and extend and expand this care and concern. And recognizing that sense of common humanity, we too up here have experienced fires. We know the fears and the pain and the suffering of loss and change. And for a couple more breaths, really inviting this focused attention, this attention that can land and be with this difficulty and struggle that's so real and present. And also this ability to extend and expand our caring. So each breath, noticing this undulation, attending closely, feeling and knowing the difficulty of suffering in this world. And then generating and extending love and care from the heart. And with the next inhale, gently releasing the focus. And with the next exhale, continuing to release through that extension. And bring attention and awareness now just fully to the body. Allowing ourselves to feel and notice the sensations throughout the body. And allowing the body to settle in a natural state of stillness. Feel or imagine this body and this wonderful quality and potential of stillness. Even as there's so much movement and energy in the body, we can choose this stillness, this stilling of the body. Bringing our low center of gravity down into the belly, feeling ourselves anchored in the body. Couple more moments here. And again, whenever our attention or awareness gets carried away by thought, fantasy, memory, or image, see if your first response can be to relax, and then release, and return to this beautiful practice, so simple, settling the body in its natural state of stillness, stability, presence. No thinking needed, no concept needed. Being this body of stillness. And from this basis of whatever stillness we can touch, we move into this practice of settling the speech into its natural state of silence. This doesn't mean there aren't still thoughts, memories, images passing through, but we focus our attention and awareness to the silence that's possible by not engaging and not energizing these thoughts, memories, and images. So settling into the body with stillness, settling in the speech with this natural, precious experience of silence. And take a moment to apply introspection. Here and there, just noticing what's the quality of the body and the mind and the heart as we tend towards the stillness and the silence. Maybe there's a quality of unbounded sacred space in the body. Maybe we experience some sense of light or a body of light with the silence. And as though a beautiful blossom emerging from the soil of stillness and the sunlight of silence, we settle the mind in its natural state of warmth and openness. Feeling or imagining a sense of almost leaning back in the mind. And allowing the mind and heart to have that sense of vastness and care, in which all phenomena, experiences can arise. sometimes called the sky-like nature of mind, sometimes the ocean of our awareness. Sensing our thoughts, memories, and images as just little waves or clouds, little bursts of the brightness of our awareness itself. And once we notice, just returning again to the greater space of awareness. Really doesn't matter how many times you have to return. Just keep giving yourself that option to relax, release, and return. Feeling a sense of refreshment when we bring all of our awareness and attention right upon itself. No longer straying, no longer traveling, welcoming ourselves home right here to this true refuge of our own awareness and its warm quality, its spacious quality, and also its brightness, not dull and sleepy, vibrant, cool, moon-like. Refinding the stillness of the body, silence of the inner speech, and warmth, openness of the mind and heart. Thank you for your practice. Felt very nourishing to practice with you all. So, in our ongoing reconfiguring of this community on Wednesday nights, it's a reminder every time that this specific group of people will likely never come together in exactly this way ever again. So it's very special. And also that because some of us maybe are new to each other, a reminder that in order for us to really cultivate and support conscious community, caring community, that we are sharing with compassion through our speech, and that we're also listening to others with compassion when they speak. I certainly know from firsthand experience and also from the pedagogical literature that some learning happens by listening to someone in front of you, but a lot of learning happens through reflection. And so it's such an essential part of our time here to be able to have that space for reflection and to do so in a way that allows us to show up with our full hearts. We need to do so with that kind of compassionate listening and compassionate speaking. Nod if you agree. All right. And you can do some thumbs up online. Thank you. God, it's every time I forget, my sight is getting worse and worse. And I really gotta get some faraway glasses. But nice to see everybody. Thanks, Diane. I can see that. Floating thumbs up. Thank you. So if anyone has a question or reflection on that practice, for some, this is a similar version of a practice we've done together for a while now, kind of calling on Tenzin Wangyal Rinpoche's instruction on how to settle body, speech, and mind into their natural states. Sometimes that's a preliminary part of the practice, and sometimes it's the whole practice, as we did there together. But starting off a bit more in the heart with that practice for our friends and the land down in Southern California. So yeah, any questions or reflections on that practice? For friends here, we use that mic so friends online can hear. And for anyone online, feel free to just raise a hand. I think I could see that. Are we shy in the new year? Any reflection that you offer is absolutely a bodhisattva activity for others. Just a reminder, just so people can hear about your experience of practice. Same with any question. So. Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, one reflection I had is that I nearly fell asleep, but the moment of nearly falling asleep it's like falling slightly unconscious was enough to flush out the day's thoughts for a second. And it was an interesting moment because I was trying to still and I was trying to still and I was kind of fighting my thoughts a little bit. So I was grateful that my body just kind of gave up, gave me a blank slate just for a second.
Yeah.
Yeah, Wednesdays.
Thanks, Ra. Yeah, and I think it is, sleep is a kind of an interesting piece in general with practice, whether or not it's Wednesday evening, or you're on like a retreat all day when truly you have enough time to take naps and eat well and you have no excuse and you're still falling asleep. Sometimes sleep is really kind of a resistance to our practice, but there is when we're really that tired and there's like that moment that we can find wakefulness. It's very instructive. Yeah, and it's interesting too because I don't think any of you are going to fall asleep as I'm talking tonight, right? But falling asleep during practice, much easier. So it's like we're not so tired that we're going to fall asleep as we're listening, but we're tired enough that when we're listening internally, there's not enough juice. So kind of a way to like hold us a little accountable, like, yeah, I could probably turn up the volume internally on what feels engaging in my practice. It's very hard, and end of the day is very hard. Yeah. Anybody else? Question, reflection? Yeah, Tom.
I've been through this practice a number of times, and it's so interesting to hear something that I've heard before, but then get it in a kind of a different way. And there was a way that you structured the words about finding a refuge in the body that was really like new to me, because I was sort of, as I wander off into these thoughts, it feels very much like a refuge where I'm like it's entirely self-contained, and I can get angry at those people and it doesn't matter. I can get, feel sorry for myself. It's all sort of self-contained, and it felt very much like a refuge. But then when you were framing it in a different way of finding refuge in presence, body presence, it felt so, it felt like, oh yeah, there's a reason I should be coming back here. It's not like it's just, oh, I have to leave my, I have to stop watching television over here
Yeah.
and do this thing. But it was sort of like, oh, this is actually nourishing. And so I that was new. It hit me for the first time actually that way. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah, that's such a beautiful experiential moment to have that sense of true refuge, because it's something to say it. We say it a lot, right? The Dharma is your true refuge. I take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha. But this feeling that there is a place of nourishment in our practice. It's funny because often we think of practice as something I like have to do to become something else. And we sometimes lose track of practice is good just for the sake of practicing, right? There's actually an intrinsic nourishment that's possible. And sometimes we, have the good fortune of experiencing something that feels actually very pleasurable in practice. And that's easy to recognize, like, oh, that's what they mean by refuge, like this really good feeling. But truly, it's all of it, because that, that skittering around of the mind is exhausting. It's depleting. Even if we're kind of skittering around to good things, which is really rare, according to the research, right? And, look at your own research of your own mind, where it goes. And there's something just so refreshing about the mind having one place to be. And when it's not just, one place to be on our Netflix special, but one place to be that's so subtle, that is so kind of restful, but it doesn't have to be sleepy. It's a really delicate balance. Thank you. Yeah. Any other questions or comments? All right. So tonight, as I mentioned, we're going into gathering virtue. And gathering virtue can sound a little bit, goal-oriented. Like, I gotta get these things. This is good for my practice. But it really has a lot of overlap with benefiting others. And throughout the course of the book, there's a lot of repetition, as you've probably noticed, but there's a lot of emphasis on certain themes over and over and over. Like the first couple chapters are really like big propaganda for bodhicitta, you know? Bodhicitta makes you healthier, happier, better looking, does your taxes and your laundry, right? Like bodhicitta! And then we get into kind of the brass tacks of, all right, it's time to train your mind. Like you can't successfully be a warrior on this path without some clarity. And we're kind of still in that mode of how do we build this clear mind? And one thing that comes up a lot in this chapter and the chapters to come, and I love this refrain, is that everyone is the cause of our awakening. And not just the purpose of our awakening, right? Like we know that everyone is the target of our compassion. We can maybe agree on that with bodhicitta, but that everyone is actually the cause as well. So in this case, what these stanzas that we'll go over, it's looking at how you can, you know, move towards these aspects of awakening or enlightenment through how you receive feedback from others, how you rejoice in others, how you actually even receive praise, and also, you know, this way of gathering the virtues that exist in other beings, exist in the benefits that we receive from other beings, and also, you know, this sense of being able to actually gather virtue by allowing our heart to rest in the sorrow of other beings. So that's where we are. So the first stanza here, the last thing we were talking, like the last thing before the new year, I love it. It's like these simple instructions on how to be non-harming. And I have to do this one more time because I thought it was wonderful. Do not act inconsiderately, moving furniture around and chairs noisily. Don't open doors with violence. Take pleasure in the practice of humility. Herons, cats, and burglars go silently and carefully. This is how they gain what they intend. And one who practices the path behaves likewise. So be like a heron, cat, or burglar, I guess, and move gently through the world. You know, just this instruction on how we move. And I think it's a kind of interesting idea of taking that level of aspiration and action to just this, even the way that we move through the world can be a bodhisattva activity. And then this next stanza is, when useful admonitions come unasked to those with skill in counseling their fellows, let them welcome them with humble gratitude and always strive to learn from everyone. So this idea that, and I like, there's a lot of caveats. When useful admonition, so not unuseful feedback, when useful feedback to those with skill, right? So someone who's actually possible to give this feedback well, with skill in counseling their fellows, welcome that with humble gratitude. And it's extremely hard to get feedback. As Pema says, getting feedback is sometimes the only way to discover our blind spots, especially when it stings. Whether it's meant to be mean or helpful, feedback has a way of getting us to look at things we don't want to see. And this idea of like always strive to learning from everyone, such an orientation that is so simple. We don't probably think of it necessarily as part of our compassionate warrior path. But it's actually, I think, quite hard to get feedback unless, you know, there's a very specific professional agenda and you're getting structured feedback, and often that feels sometimes a little superficial. So that when we do, you know, have that opportunity for someone to reflect to us, to be open with it fully. And then the next one really gets into a couple stanzas here on rejoicing in the goodness of others. And I just think that there's kind of no end to the benefit of this practice, sometimes called empathetic joy or mudita. But praise all who speak the truth and say, your words are excellent. And when you notice others acting well, encourage them in terms of warm approval. Extol them even in their absence. When they're praised by others, do the same. But when the qualities they praise are yours, appreciate their skill in knowing qualities. The goal of every act is happiness itself, though even with great wealth it's rarely found. So take your pleasure in the qualities of others. Let them be a heartfelt joy to you. And I like especially this line, the goal of every act is happiness itself, though even with great wealth it's rarely found. And this is one of these refrains I find so interesting, right? If everybody wants to be happy, then why do we live in this world where people are not happy? It's like, oh, we have this shared goal, like, let's be happy. And, the short answer is we're looking for it in the wrong place, right? And our expectations are misaligned with reality as it is. And this idea that it's almost like the refuge, our true happiness can be found in really rejoicing in the goodness of others. Just that sense of, it can be so simple. I think one thing I really rejoice in is when you see a parent with a young child and just that sense of patience and calm and connection and just that natural feeling of joy that you can get. Or, if you are listening to a musician, maybe a new song that you've never heard, and it's just amazing. And of course, there's a sensory pleasure of enjoying the song, but you can also rejoice, like, wow, amazing, like this occurred. This level of like ingenuity and imagination. So the way Pema says it is, we all want to be happy, yet our desire for happiness is frequently not in sync with our actions. We overindulge in various substances, we tell people off because it feels good to set them straight. Instead of increasing our well-being, we strengthen the very qualities that cause suffering. So even though what we want is happiness, it's rarely found. And she says that one of her teachers, Zigar Khantrul Rinpoche, calls it rejoicement therapy, to really experience that sense of enjoying others. And, it's in and throughout this book, the four immeasurable practices of compassion, loving kindness, empathetic joy, and equanimity. They're really woven into the Bodhisattva path, right? It really is, such an important part of being able to meet the suffering of the world, work on our own difficulties, is to have the strength of the heart. And I love how much he's highlighting rejoicing, because I sometimes think we don't spend quite enough time on mudita, on that rejoicing with others. And then, and at catching sight of others, think that it will be through them that you will come to Buddhahood. So look on them with open and loving hearts. This will become, and Pema says, this is a prevalent theme, that other beings are the cause of enlightenment. When they bother us, we learn patience. When they're suffering, we learn loving kindness and compassion. No matter what reaction, we can relate to them in a way that leads to Buddhahood. Instead of buying into aversion, we become more embracing. Instead of staying stuck in selfishness, we extend a hand to someone in distress. Instead of getting jealous, we do the rejoicement therapy. And so it's interesting if you think, like, let's just think about this day, for example. Did anybody encounter someone who you felt like wasn't, a cause of your enlightenment? Yeah, right? Or maybe that wasn't, ideally what you hoped or wanted. And I'd be curious, like, if you think about it now, like, how could any interaction actually be in service to our path? I'll give a great example, because my God, I had a clogged sink today, and I couldn't do it with the regular stuff, so I called an actual plumber. And I have to say, totally delightful human, like even on presence, like great smile, that was easy. But then when we discovered that there's probably a crushed pipe underneath my house and it's require like extensive, I was like, I know it's not his fault, right? and still he's the one delivering the news. And it really was, I was like noticing in myself like so much aversion. I was like, no, I don't want this, and you're telling me that. And I really, yeah, luckily was aware of it and aware like in that moment, like, wow, this is such a much longer day for you than you probably thought, huh? Because he thought he's gonna come like do the snake, we're out. And then like 3 hours later, he's like, oh, we're fucked. There's so much more work. I gotta come back another day. And it's not as though he makes more money for there being more work, right? It's like discount plumbing, not trying to promote or denigrate discount plumbing. But, they're the ones who create the income and he won't get any more how he shows up or what he finds or what he does. And so just that opportunity to engage at a human level with his efforts, his struggles, right? And there was nothing to rejoice in together, but still, like you can make even these situations that are qualitatively pretty unpleasant, if not difficult, and find a different way to be with it. So I'm curious, can anyone think of an example where maybe prior to coming here, that wasn't a source of your awakening, but maybe there's a different way?
Yeah, this is really silly, but
He has a mic.
sorry. My next door neighbors have a dog that barks incessantly. And oftentimes they leave the dog at home alone while they're at work and their kids are at school. And the dog will bark at someone walking by outside their house. And it'll start up and it'll just go and go and go and go. And I find it really, really irritating. And I go through this whole big, spiel of they've got this dog and they're not training it right, and they're not taking care of it right, and they're abandoning it, and the poor dog, and it's on and on and on about them and the dog and my irritation. And today it started up, and I got irritated at first, and then I started to laugh at my own irritation because it was so petty. I mean, it wasn't a big deal. It wasn't like it woke me up or anything. It was just a dog barking, and I knew that it was going to stop eventually.
Yeah.
And so I had this moment of self-reflection and really realizing that it had way more to do with my sensitivity and irritability than it had to do with the dog actually barking. And that's often how it is with me and stuff with other people or other creatures. It has way more to do with my sensitivity and nascent irritability.
Clear seeing. Yes. And it is, it's not as though you're creating something that's unrealistic, like it's pretty annoying, but there's still like a different way of being with it that can be more helpful. So I think, and I do think though, that moment of turning towards and being able to even laugh at oneself, like that is so much freedom, right? That's just so much freedom for you and then for everyone, right? Because then hopefully it prevents also when you see the neighbor in the street and being like, oh God, those guys, right?
Right. I mean, the whole thing became fun. It was kind of fun.
Yeah.
At that point.
Yeah. Yeah. Today.
This,
Yeah. Yeah. Sarana?
Yeah, so I was on the other side of the person. I was doing the job for someone, and then the person was like not because of me, but some other thing, she got really frustrated and started stressing out, and then her tone talking to me, it's like started changing. And then I got really annoyed and I started getting angry, like just like heating up. But then I'm thinking oh, thank God I don't have to do, like, I don't work for this person like full time. Like I don't have to see her again. Like,
Yeah.
and then later when I getting outside, and I'm just like, my mind is just like keep on going, and like making assumptions just because she's uber rich. I'm thinking like, oh, she's entitled, like, and yeah, so
And now?
and now, and yeah, I see that, like, I mean, everybody gets stressed out and get frustrated sometimes,
Yeah.
and then I don't have to make assumptions about that person, and yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, it's so simple, or Jimmy said silly, but like this is how we live, right? The Bodhisattva path isn't some grand thing. It's really what we're doing every day. And so much of these kind of familiar habits of especially aversion, right? And clinging, the simple ones, like really don't want that. Ooh, give me more of that. It's so predictable, but we don't see it, or we just kind of we keep like energizing it.
Yeah.
And to like break it is profound.
Yeah, and was a good reminder. Yeah, that was the point, that everyone is the cause, and through
Yes.
that, we develop those qualities.
Totally. Yeah. And it's hard. Yeah. I think I did pretty good, but I at one point I have these cats at my house, and I was worried the door would be open and they would run out. So I was probably that frazzled person too. It's like, where are the cats? So it's very humbling, and none of us do that well when we're under duress and stress. And so to have also, like, when we experience stress or we experience heartbreak or we experience frustration, to let that help us understand all others too, so it's the both and, like, whatever side of it we're on. Yeah. Anyone else? Anyone else have someone who's like, there's no way this person is on my path? Yeah, okay.
Well, I don't know, because I don't know them personally,
Yeah.
but I work at a big company, and CEO announced today that all employees will be back in the office 5 days a week. And
You had a lot of sympathy here.
I worked for a subsidiary of this company, and I am fully remote, and now was already going to be going back 3 days a week, and now I learned today that it's 5 days a week. It doesn't really make a lot of sense for the type of work that I do to be in the office 5 days a week. But yeah, it's weird because it's this person, and it's very clear that it's the CEO. It's not even clear if anyone else cares about it, but what he says goes. And not having any even personal contact with this person ever,
Right.
I'm having a really hard time
Yeah.
having compassion or understanding about the decision
Yeah.
that impacts so many people
Yeah.
and me personally. So
Yeah.
anyway, I'm not really sure what to do with that one, but I had to say it because it's
Yeah.
certainly having a struggle with it.
No, it's such a good example. And yeah, condolences on that, because that's
Thank you.
yeah. And it's interesting as I think about it, when I used to do a lot more teaching in the healthcare setting, and a lot of the frustration contributing to burnout isn't patients, sometimes it's colleagues for sure, sometimes patients, but often it's the system. And you're like, how do I have compassion towards like a system?
Yeah.
And it's still like breaking it down to like the complexity pieces of, whoever created the system was humans, and it might indeed be just the CEO. Who knows? There might be other
It's hard
people.
for me to know exactly.
Yeah. And whoever is the person or persons, like, what are their deepest fears, sorrows, pain? What was it like for them when they were a child? What will it be like for them when they die? Like, sometimes we need to actually think about like the rawness of this human experience, to find our way to not like, oh, because of all that, it's okay, you're doing this. No, but because I'm being confronted by senseless harm, like unnecessary, right? Like, it's not like, oh, well, this is going to be hard, but we need to do it. Like, it's like that senseless kind of, difficulty or challenge or harm that can be like so hard for us to make peace with, and can create unbelievable cycles of rumination.
Yeah.
And so the bodhisattva activity is first for you, right? So the options when we feel that kind of righteous indignation or right disappointment or frustration, I know it well, is to like really kind of get into this phase of blame or despair, and like there's no peace there. Like the only sensible response is, how can I be compassionate to myself in the way this impacts me? And then as it relates to this other or others, I don't understand, yet I'm not gonna kind of like engage in the aversion. And there's some suffering there, right? There's some suffering that's leading to that decision. And sometimes it feels so abstracted, and we don't need to know about their childhood or how they'll die. We just need to know that because they're human, there's suffering there. And like a lot of the behaviors that contribute to people acting in harmful ways, it's born out of our suffering, not out of our goodness. So, but it's such a tough, and when it impacts you, like on a day-to-day, it's a very worthy challenge. It's not like that was annoying, but I don't really have to deal with it till next year. It's like, oh wow, I'm gonna have to think about this every time, I'm making my way in. So, the Shanti Deva would really praise this opportunity that you have because it's right there. Yeah. Yeah, and maybe it'll, spark the revolution and the rebel forces will combine. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing. Super relatable. Thank you. Yeah. Did I see another? No. Yeah, we have time. Because I do think, and I hope you all hear and feel this, like, again, really nice in the stanzas, but like, really, like, how do we orient this way? Yeah.
So in my work, I am a fundraiser at Berkeley, and I'm working on this really beautiful project where a group of PhD students want to honor their a group of PhD students want to honor their advisor. He's just about to pass away, and there's a building, and they want to name a room after him. So they're getting all of their students, and I'm mostly in a supportive role, but they're not fundraisers, so I'm doing a lot of the asking for them. Anyway, so I'm working with a big group of people, and we're really, really close to the goal. And there was one donor who was definitely could have like closed it out. The success he had in his life is directly related to this professor.
Wow.
All of the money that he sold to the Singaporean government is directly because of this person, and which he fully recognizes, but he just wouldn't do it because even though he loved this man, he doesn't believe in the woke culture of Berkeley and how it goes against his conservative Christian values, and things like inclusivity or using pronouns. And this was over like five meetings.
Yeah.
And it's just, I just couching, using religion as a way to promote inequality and hate.
Yeah.
It was really hard. And this is really hard.
Yeah.
I mean, I also I wanted to take his money just because I was like, I'm going to use it for good. And then I was like, we don't want your money. I let it go, but it was just really hard to sit there with that and not otherize him. Mm-hmm. Like to just be like, you're one of them over there. And, try to be like, okay, this man has a story. Everybody has a story about how they got where they were. Everybody has a story, right?
That's right.
So, really hard not to be super judgmental.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, yeah, God bless the fundraisers. Thank you. A.
And to just let it go. Be like,
Let it go, but
Let it
also like it's such a meaningful adjutant, right? If this idea, there's like this famous story of Atisha who brought the Lojong slogans to Tibet, and he was worried because he heard that the Tibetan people were so kind, so he brought an assistant who was very difficult to be with to make sure that his practice would be sharp, right? So like we need these adjutants, and then he came to Tibet and he's like, no need, like plenty of annoying people here. But that's like the apocryphal story. And I think like these people who like show us the limits of our compassion, I'm not saying they're like great people, right, per se. We don't, but we, like you were saying, to engage in the aversion is to create a dehumanizing othering. And then we are doing this, the same thing, right? And so it is super annoying and yet so helpful. And that's the kind of energy of this, like really seeing the, all beings, every single being is a source of my enlightenment. And I like, in these Lojong slogans, there's one that I think about all the time. I wonder if we should do them again here. It's been quite a long time. The Lojong slogans are these pithy little slogans about turning towards difficulty. And this one is be grateful to everyone. Like be everyone. And the whole energy is in there. Yeah. It doesn't mean it's easy. It doesn't mean we have to like it. It doesn't mean we're going to do it well. And one of the other stanzas here is, and this one's kind of like tied in, how we can be with others. Speak with honest words, coherently, with candor, in a clear, harmonious voice. Abandon partiality, rejection, and attraction, and speak with moderation gently. Whew. Like so much in there. Like even just being honest and coherent is very hard. And then this idea, candor, clear, harmonious, and recognizing in our, it's really tricky. And I think for, both the examples you both shared, so easy and appealing and momentarily satisfying to just vent with our colleagues about it, right? And I think there's some room for that. I would never say don't do any of that because it creates the conditions for big pun in the house. Oh my God, so good. Friends online, we had a drive-by musical experience there. I think that that, what was I saying? That was too good. Oh yeah. Venting. Venting is so helpful, right? Because it creates community, or it can. But then there's a way in which the venting becomes cynicism and starts to really kind of rot out our ability to be with others in a helpful way. And, I think it's really challenging to have right speech, to have mindfulness of our words. And I love here the abandon partiality, rejection, and attraction. And at this point, I love the voice recognition technology and a lot of its potential because it can recognize our vocal tone and emotion and what's in there. And we learn a lot by recording ourselves at the end of the day, tell a story about your day. And just not only what we said, but how we said it. How much aversion is in there? How much craving is in there? Are we speaking with partiality? Are we speaking in a clear way? And then the one that I think most of us really don't abide by, moderation. Speaking with moderation, and then gently. It's so beautiful. There are a couple people in my life who really speak gently or with gentleness. And it's such a gift. Not for people who, in the culture I was raised with, that's not how we roll. It's not a gentle conversation. But I really can see, and I think when we're more dropped into ourselves, that gentleness comes naturally. So I like this idea of one other way to practice with this kind of gathering of virtues that really does benefit others, being so mindful of speech. not only how we speak to others, but how we speak about others. Probably the hardest, because sometimes we kind of hold it together as we're talking to someone, but then we can't wait to go, like undermine and describe, the horrors or the difficulties. Yeah. Does that? Yeah. And I think it's like, how do we have a realistic relationship with our, with our right speech? Because it's really, really hard. It's really, really hard. So can we bring some awareness to it and just be discerning with how much and when? I mean, yeah, as someone who loves the Dharma and teaches the Dharma and hangs out with other people who teach the Dharma, I will assure you it's not as though there is 100% right speech. But it is really meaningful to recognize, what might be the benefit of that. And not, again, only for others, like, oh, but they're never going to hear me. I'm talking, but they're never going to hear me. It's not just about how it impacts others, it really is how it impacts us, right? And that aversion energy, as I mentioned, just that repetition and that rumination. And as you were saying, like, it's done, right? He said no, and still it's like, what the heck? Like, why? You could, you should, right? And that energy of the, wanting to cling on to what we don't feel is right. It's funny, I think there's something even a bit more attractive about aversion than craving, which is a little counterintuitive, but really focusing on and coming back to that which we don't like and which was hard has just as much, if not more, power than kind of moving towards what we like and want more of. Please.
Okay. So I'm the person who, if I'd run into a Dharma person, they would have looked at me with compassion because I was being kind of an idiot. So I was at the farmer's market on Saturday, which is a place of great joy, the one in Alamany. Like, I really love it.
Yeah.
I go rain or shine. But when I was there, I saw somebody had their dog, and people aren't supposed to have dogs at the farmer's market. So I went on this kind of like, I appointed myself this one-woman committee to tell people not to have their dogs at the farmer's market. So I was, I was saying, like, this first woman with her kind of under teenage kid, you're not supposed to have dogs at the farmer's market. And they said, oh, we didn't know. And I didn't know. And I said, well, there were signs. And she said, I didn't see it. I didn't see a sign. And so then I got kind of like, oh, she thinks I'm lying. So I went and got a sign and dragged it over to show her. So then I thought to myself, I'm being batshit crazy. To go to this trouble to kind of shame this woman, or at least to prove I wasn't lying. So then I was kind of very nicely saying to a few other people, oh, you shouldn't have a dog here because there's food. And I have a dog. I love my dog. I'd love to bring my dog, but I don't because I respect the fact that there's food here. And then I thought to myself, clear. And I was mostly in a nice tone, and people were, oh, okay. But just that first time with the sign. But then I thought to myself, I clearly have a great need to be able to officiously tell people what to do.
Yeah.
And I realize it's because I'm retired and I used to be able to do that. And I really miss it. So then I decided, and back when I was in my work, I was, I think, telling people to do things for good and right, not for, other reasons, because there was like a more of a positive effect could happen. I was like a teacher, and I was telling people this is how we'll learn. But this time it was just me doing something really useless because people are going to bring their dogs anyway. So then I thought, I need to put this energy into doing something a lot more useful, like good things with my climate change group.
Beautiful.
and not, not dragging this sign around the farmer's market.
But you were the cause for their awakening.
They probably were looking at me saying like, oh, that poor woman, she must have had something happen with her and the dog.
But
So I
Yeah.
had a chance to sort of see being the person who's
Yeah.
really annoying.
how did you see that? How did you see that? Like, how did you actually recognize?
Because when I dragged the sign over, and I was noticing, I've seen myself and I was thinking, this is really
Yeah,
pretty extreme.
that is an
You know, it's
amazing
kinda
example.
Like you do notice things like
Yeah.
that, that can be really extreme.
Yeah. Dogs are welcome here. There's no food
Oh,
other than
I'm
these
being
chocolates.
so much better now.
Yeah.
I welcomed
Yeah.
your dog.
Yeah. Such an amazing example. And also, you know, the humility of being able to say like, wow, I was batshit crazy there, right? And then see it and then continue to make it part of not only, you know, like your self-understanding, but like what brings you joy and connection to others, right? And service through this climate change work. So beautiful example. And sometimes, actually many times, I always say they should put a warning label on meditation practice, like you are going to learn things about yourself you never wanted to know. Like they advertise it as all this other stress reduction, but like when you start paying attention, you see all this stuff you didn't ask for and that is needed. Like we have to see it or else it continues to just get in the way. So yeah, thank you. And I can see it so clearly. Right. That's right.
So I was getting in the way. I'm like joyous at the farmer's market, but instead I was hassling people. So,
Yeah.
and getting very distracted.
Yeah. And it's so relatable, you know? Yeah. There's a specific trail that I go on, and I had a friend who self-appointed herself to tell people that there's no dogs, and totally ruined our walk. You know? So many dogs, nobody cared. And like even people on their headphones should be like, excuse me. You know? And it's like, wow. Yeah. I know. I'll link you guys up. Yeah. No, and it's good to laugh about it, right? Because it's so ridiculous. These things in the way of our awakening, like some of them are really meaningful, like pillars of injustice, but a lot of it is like our pettiness and our self-absorption. And so again and again with the Bodhisattva path, it's how do I think of others? And I love it too that it's also with the rejoicing. You know, the sunlight today, did anybody get to be in the sun? Like, it was amazing. And just this, like, may all people feel the ease of warmth of being in the sun. You know, like just, you can offer up the good just as you can kind of offer towards the difficult. And I love this, I just want to share this little practice before we go, which is from the stanza, always fired by the highest aspiration, laboring to implement the antidotes, you will gather virtues in the fields of qualities, of benefits, and then of sorrows. And this idea that we can kind of gather virtue by thinking about the qualities of great teachers that we've known or read about. You know, just like imagining the qualities of these great teachers. And then we can also imagine all the beings who've benefited us and supported us. And then also imagining all the beings who are full of sorrow and allowing our hearts to soften. And Pema suggests, like, I just love this. She says, one way to put this into action is the 3-bite practice. Anytime you eat a meal, when you take the first bite, you pause and you think of, and you kind of, you know, in some ways offer this bite to all the beings, all the teachers who have these beautiful qualities of open-heartedness or courage. And then with the second bite, you think of everyone who has benefited you. And with the third bite, you know, all of the sorrows of those in the world. So just these simple ways of kind of bringing these practices of cultivating these virtues into our everyday techniques. It's, you know, in the field of behavior change or science, you'd call this like a little behavioral cue. Like, how is a way? What is the way we can do that into our everyday life? So, yeah, really wonderful. And thank you all for, especially the sharing and the honesty. It's so helpful to kind of bring these practices here and to make this feeling of like gathering virtue to feel a bit more alive. Not necessarily easier, especially when it involves other people, but to see that it really can be just part of how we are engaging. There's so many opportunities every day. So let's take a moment to dedicate our practice. And so coming back to the body and the breath. And considering the possibility that our time here together could be felt or imagined as a source of energy, maybe a source of love. And in this dedication, we offer this energy and love, offering it up completely with that heart of the Bodhisattva. And so if it feels natural, placing hands together in front of the heart in symbolic gesture of offering. And imagine that we could take this collected energy and love and dedicate it so that all beings everywhere could feel healthy and strong. All beings everywhere could be free from inner and outer harms. That all beings everywhere could feel love and belonging. Thank you all so much for your practice and your presence.